This lecture focuses on Islam and other religions. In this lecture, we explore the relationship between Islam and other religions, as well as how religious minorities were managed under Islamic rule in different historical periods very briefly, and what the Quran says about building relationships with people of other religions. In particular, we will explore the relationship between Islam and other religious traditions, the religious context of the Quran, the range of views about the religious other in the Quran, and how these might be interpreted, and interreligious relations after the Prophet's death, and finally, some principles for building positive interreligious relations today. Let us look at the relationship between Islam and other religions briefly. Before we go on to consider what Islamic teachings have to say about other religions, I think it is worth noting that there are different ideas about this issue. Islam, like other religious traditions, has not developed a single approach that clearly explains how Muslims should think about people from other religions, know how they should engage with those people. Among the hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world today, there are many different views and approaches about this. Many Muslims see no difficulty in having non Muslims as close friends. They may be willing to participate in interfaith meetings, work with non Muslims towards a common goal, or on a joint project, and they may congratulate the non-Muslims on the occasion of important religious festivals or celebrations. On the other end of the spectrum, there may be Muslims who refuse to engage with non-Muslims, who see acts like working together for a common cause or passing on congratulations for a celebration as prohibited acts, or at least discouraged acts. They may even see non Muslims as having less value than Muslims. There are, of course, others who hold a range of positions in between. So, in summary, there are plenty of views among Muslims about people of other religious traditions and also about other religions. So, to address the question of how Islamic teachings see other religions, or people of other religions, we need to look at this question from a number of key perspectives. First, what the Quran appears to say about people of other religions. Secondly, how the Prophet treated those from other faiths or other religions. And thirdly, how the Muslim state or Muslim states historically managed religious minorities within their borders. We can also identify some important principles for governing interreligious relationships today. Hopefully, by the end of the lecture, you will gain a sense of how different perspectives have developed and of the potential for harmonious relationships between Muslims and people of other religious traditions. Let us look at the religious context of the Quran. In order to get a better sense of what the Quran and the Prophet's practice have to say about other religions and people of other religions, we need to have some sense of the context in which these ideas emerged. The context paved the way for the Islamic ideas about people of other religions and other religions that we can find in the Quran and Prophet Muhammad's practice. So, what was the religious context like when the Quran was revealed? Well, the early 7th century Arabia was actually a very mixed context, a religious context. There were many well established religious traditions already in the region. For example, Christianity was widespread inside and outside Arabia. There were many Christian tribes in different parts of Arabia. The Jews were also present in Arabia. At the time of Prophet Muhammad, the Jews had a long history in Arabia and were well integrated into communities as craftsmen, traders, farmers, and Bedouin. We also know that the Zoroastrian religion was also present in the region, particularly in the eastern parts of Arabia. As well as these monotheistic faiths, there were also different forms of polytheism or paganism in Arabia. Well, monotheism is not belief in one god. Polytheism is about belief in multiple gods. So, what is polytheism? Well, polytheism involved the worship of a multitude of gods, which usually took the form of pagan idols or statues. So, when the Quran emerged or when the Quran was revealed, many religious traditions were already well established in Arabia. What this meant was that the early Muslims or the earliest Muslims were very used to interacting with people from other religious traditions. Social relations between religions or people of different religions was a normal and necessary part of everyday life. So, what does the Quran say about other religions or people of other religions? I use these two phrases interchangeably in this lecture. The Quran actually has a lot to say about how Muslims should engage with people from other religions. Sometimes we refer to these people as the religious other. This religious other can be a person from any other religion or faith. But in the context of the Quran, it usually refers to a polytheist, a Christian, or a Jew. These are the main faiths or religions mentioned in the Quran. The Quran does not refer to many other religions like Buddhism or Hinduism because there were no Buddhists or Hindus or Buddhist or Hindu communities living in Mecca or Medina at the time. Overall, we can perhaps say that the Quran's view of other religions is complex. There are verses in it that come across as very harsh in tone and appear to discourage or even prohibit certain relationships with those from other religions. But there are also other verses that strongly encourage Muslims to have good relations with people of other religions. A lot depends on the context in which the verse was revealed. So, what are some of the positive views about the people of other religions or even other religions in the Quran? In terms of positive views, we can say that monotheistic religions like Christianity and Judaism were given a special place within Islam. Jews and Christians were considered people of the book or scripture. This means they were acknowledged as following scriptures that were part of the same revelation as Islam, or at least the source of revelation for Islam, Christianity, and Judaism was one, that is God. You might be aware that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are called the Abrahamic faiths, meaning that they all stem back to Abraham, a key figure in each of their scriptures. So the reference to being people of the book is an acknowledgement of that shared history. So the Quran recognizes Jews and Christians as the people of the book, or in Arabic, Ahl al-Kitab. Ahl is AHL, Al-Kitab is ALKITAB. The Quran encourages Muslims and the people of the book to live together in peace because, first of all, they share the belief in the same God. In one of the verses of the Quran, it says, Our God and your God is one. Our God meaning the God of Muslims, and your God meaning the God of Jews and Christians is one. The Quran also has an attitude of the utmost respect and reverence for the Torah and the Gospels. The Arabic word is Taurat and Injil, Injil. Injil is usually translated as Gospels. The Torah and Gospels are two key Jewish and Christian scriptures. In no place in the Quran it makes disparaging remarks about these scriptures. Instead, it refers to these scriptures as scriptures that have come from God. The Quran also encourages Muslims to respect the people of the book. For example, it emphasizes that there are Christians who are upright, righteous, and do good deeds. And the same thing can be said about the Jewish people. Let me mention a couple of verses from the Quran, in this case referring to the people of the book. Chapter 3, verses 113 to 116. It goes on to say, not all of them, meaning people of the book, are alike. Of the people of the book are a portion that stand for the right. They rehearse the signs of Allah all night long, and they prostrate themselves in adoration. They believe in Allah and the last day. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and they hasten in emulation all good works. They are in the ranks of the righteous. The Quran also encourages Muslims not to argue with the people of the book about matters of faith, except in a way that is best. One particularly interesting verse is chapter 2, verse 62. It says, surely those who believed in Allah and those who are Jews and Christians and Sabians, whosoever believes in Allah and in the last day and does good deeds, all such people will have their reward with their Lord, and there will be no reason for them to fear, nor shall they grieve. This verse is a very interesting one, and it has been used by some Muslim scholars today, that is in the modern period, to support the idea that Christians and Jews may also receive salvation, even though they do not follow the religion of Islam as such. This is an interesting debate among Muslims that unfortunately we won't have time to focus on in this lecture. But again, this verse highlights the commonality between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and recognizes that their good deeds are valued by God. So, taking into account their special status in the Quran, the people of the book were recognized as a specified category of citizens within the early Muslim state, and this continued pretty much until the modern period. This means that the people of the book, in this case the Christians and Jews, had specified rights that were protected by the state, by the Muslim state. The people of the book were often exempted from participating in the military or military activities. They had the freedom to practice their religion, and they could govern their lives according to their religious and legal norms. Importantly, they were also given the freedom to maintain their religious traditions without state interference in their beliefs. So, as you can see, there are a lot of positive views about the people of the book in the Quran and also in the Islamic tradition. So, what about the Quran's views towards polytheism and polytheists? Well, as I mentioned earlier, polytheism was another belief system that was very common in Arabia when the Quran was revealed. And the Quran is much less positive towards this tradition. In fact, it is quite negative. One of the key messages Prophet Muhammad conveyed was that of monotheism, or the belief in one God. So the polytheists' belief system was completely contrary to this very important Quranic idea and message, that is, of the belief in one God. However, we can still find some positive views. Those who worshipped multiple gods were tolerated in society. The Quran also encouraged good neighborly relations towards them as long as the polytheists were prepared to live in peace with the Muslims. So again, the religious tradition is rejected and the people were tolerated. So, what does the Prophet Muhammad's practice indicate about relations with people of other religious traditions? One of the clearest examples of the commitment of the Quran and the Prophet to live peacefully with people of other religious traditions can be found in what is referred to as the Constitution of Medina or the Charter of Medina. After Prophet Muhammad migrated to Medina in 622 and established his authority there, one of his first acts was to set down this charter or constitution. This was really an agreement between Muslims and all the significant tribes and clans in Medina, both Muslim and non Muslim. This agreement refers to the people of Medina as a community. It emphasizes that no distinction should be made between the Muslims and others, particularly when it came to the defense of Medina or the defense of the community of Medina. It also stresses that all people are to be treated equally and are to have religious freedom. Let me mention some of its provisions. For example, it says, the Jews shall maintain their own religion and the Muslims theirs. It also says, whosoever among the Jews follows us shall have help and equality. They shall not be injured, nor shall any enemy be aided against them. There are plenty of articles in this charter. I just gave a couple of examples. So as you can see, this is a very important document in terms of establishing positive relations with people of other religions. That goes way back to the time of Prophet Muhammad. So what about the verses of the Quran that are less positive towards those from other religious traditions? Some of you might be thinking about various events from the life of Prophet Muhammad that perhaps do not go in line with the picture I have just painted in relation to toleration of people of other religions. For example, what about the very harsh treatment of three Jewish tribes in Medina at the time of the Prophet, which led to these tribes being eventually expelled from the city and they were punished? Chapter 59, verses 3 to 4, refers to some of these events in relation to the Jewish tribes in Medina, and it makes reference to exile and so forth. Let me just read the verses. And had it not been that Allah had decreed for them the exile, He would certainly have chastised them in this world, and for them in the hereafter is the chastisement of the fire. That is because they were opposed to Allah and His Messenger, and whoever is opposed to Allah, surely Allah is severe in retribution. Here we need to look at the context in which the treatment of the Jewish tribes in Medina occurred. Let me just mention this very, very briefly about the context. The Constitution of Medina, or the Charter of Medina that I referred to, included all the main parties living in Medina, all the main tribes living in Medina, including the Jewish tribes. One of the key obligations on the part of the tribes or the parties to this charter was to defend Medina against any outside aggression. The charter says, and I quote, the contracting parties are bound to help one another against any attack on Yathrib. Yathrib refers to Medina. It's another name for Medina. So, based on the charter, no party in Medina was supposed to provide any kind of assistance to outside aggressors against Medina. But Muslim historical sources say that the three Jewish tribes violated some of the terms of the charter in some way by not defending Medina as they should, or by not participating in the defense of Medina when it was threatened, or by supporting outside aggressors who came to attack Medina. As a result of this, in line with the tribal customs of the time, each tribe was punished. So when we read of negative views or positions about those from other religions in the Quran, in this case, for example, the Jewish tribes in Medina, we also need to look at why the verses were revealed. What was the context like? This helps us to understand whether they refer to a specific situation at the time. Again, for example, in chapter 9, you can find other verses of the Quran that appear harsh towards the people from other religions, in this case, Jews and Christians, or people of the book. For example, chapter 9, verse 29 says, fight against, in this case, Christians and Jews, until they pay the tribute readily being brought to law. This is referring to people of the book. Again, we need to look at who the Quran was addressing in verses like this, and why. Is it addressing all Jews and Christians, or is it addressing some Jews and Christians in a particular context? In these verses, the Quran was addressing certain people of the book who were working hard to undermine the Muslim community and constantly attacking it and the religion of Islam. Not all Jews, not all Christians, some people. By the time we come to the end of the Prophet's life in Medina, the Quran emphasized that these people who were to be considered enemies of the community must be subdued, controlled, and prevented from further attempts to destroy the community. As far as these people are concerned, there was to be no toleration. They had to be stopped. Therefore, you see, in the Quranic language is very uncompromising tone, extremely harsh language. But for the people of the book and also polytheists who were at peace with the Muslim community and were not acting against the community in any way, they were to be treated as members of the community. So again, the point is the Quran was not addressing all polytheists or all Jews or all Christians, only some people in a specific context. Let us look at some further examples of less positive verses of the Quran. There are also verses of the Quran that critique not the people of other religions per se, but their beliefs. We can see this most clearly with some of the references in the Quran, for example, to Christians and Christianity. For example, the Quran criticizes how Christians perceive Jesus Christ and the Christian belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. The Quran also disparages the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. Let me just read one such text. Here we are looking at chapter 4, verses 171 to 172. It says, O people of the book, commit no excesses in your religion, or utter anything concerning Allah but the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was only a messenger of Allah, His word that He sent to Mary, and a spirit from Him that He sent. So believe in Allah and His messengers, and do not say three. Desist. It is better for you. Allah is one God. Far exalted is He above having offspring. He is all that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth. Allah is sufficient, a disposer of affairs. The Messiah would never scorn to be a servant of Allah, nor would the angels who are the nearest to Allah. As for those who scorn His service and are arrogantly proud, He shall gather them all to Himself to answer. So you can see here quite clearly the rejection of the idea of Trinity, or God being one of the three, and the idea that Jesus was divine. From a Quranic point of view, Jesus was not divine. He was a human being, but a special one. But he is certainly considered not divine according to the Quran. In some, we can say there are a range of verses in the Quran that refer to those from other religions. Some are very positive, some are more critical, and some clearly address particular situations that were occurring when the verses were revealed. Some of these verses refer to people of other religions, others refer to beliefs of other religions. Often the Quran makes a distinction between the people and the beliefs. Now let us look at what happened after the Prophet's death. Question for us is, how did things change after the Prophet's death? Well, after the Prophet's death, there were some significant changes to the ways non-Muslims or people of other religions were treated in the Muslim state. You might recall that in the years after the Prophet died, the Muslim state expanded significantly and very rapidly, bringing within its borders many more people from other cultures and religious communities. In the Middle East and North Africa to start with, and of course this has expanded significantly to Central Asia and so forth. Relationships therefore had to be managed differently to what was during the time of the Prophet, when the community was smaller and less diverse. One set of ideas that have had a lasting impact on the way people from other religions were viewed is included in the so-called the Pact of Omar. There is some dispute about when this pact or agreement was written exactly or was produced and who wrote it. But there are many scholars who consider this document to go back at least to the first 1 or 2 centuries of Islam, so reasonably early. The Pact of Omar is an understanding or an agreement. We'll look at that in a minute. The pact is presented in historical sources as an agreement between the Muslim state and a non-Muslim community, or at least the basics of such an agreement. It established limits on how the non-Muslims could express themselves in that society. In the agreement, the non-Muslim community apparently agreed to certain stipulations. Let me read some of them to you. It is usually presented in the form of a letter to the head of the Muslim state. It says, for example, we, meaning the people of the book, in this case Christians, we shall not build in our cities or in our neighborhood new monasteries, churches, convents, or monks' cells, nor shall we repair by day or by night such of them as fall in ruins or are situated in the quarters of the Muslims. We shall not manifest our religion publicly, nor convert anyone to it. We shall not prevent any of our kin from entering Islam if they wish it. We shall show respect towards Muslims, and we shall rise from our seats when they wish to sit. There are, of course, a number of other things in this Pact of Omar. These ideas have gone on to influence state practice in Muslim majority states historically, and even to some extent until the modern period. They gave weight to the ideas like superiority of Islam over other religions, or Muslims over people of other religious traditions. But this pact or agreement, as with other texts related to the relationship between Muslims and those from other religions, needs to be seen within its historical context. In the pre-modern period, there was often quite a strong connection between the political and religious spheres within a state. Most states had a state religion. For example, Orthodox Christianity was the state religion of the Byzantine Empire, and it was moderated by patriarchs located in various cities throughout the empire. However, today, the idea of a state religion and a strong connection between the political and religious realms has lost its significance in many societies, for example, in Australia. In this context, because of the close link between the political and religious spheres, those belonging to the dominant religion often had more rights and privileges than those from other religious traditions. On the other hand, members of minority religious traditions could not exercise their religious freedom to the same extent as members of the majority religion. As a result, those from minority religion had their public worship restricted or even had to wear sometimes identifying clothing or symbols to show that which religious tradition they belonged to. This happened in many societies historically, including in Muslim societies. Today, the norms of equality and non-discrimination hold that people from all religions should be treated equally, and no special privileges should be given to those in the majority, at least in many societies. However, that was not the case back then. Many Muslim scholars working in the area of interreligious relations today are returning to those Quranic verses or practices of Prophet Muhammad that are supportive of harmonious relations between Muslims and people of other religions. Or those that affirm followers of other religions should not be treated with or should be treated with dignity and respect. So these are the positive Quranic verses and also positive practices of Prophet Muhammad with regard to people of other religious traditions. So a lot of Muslim scholars are saying that we should emphasize those positive ideas and practices. This scholarship is building on the foundation that was provided by the Quran and the Prophet's practice for positive and harmonious interreligious relations today. Let me mention a few of these principles for building positive interreligious relations that many Muslim thinkers and scholars are emphasizing today. The Quran emphasizes that all human beings are from the same soul, from the same source, even though they have been created with lots of differences. The Quran says that diversity is a natural part of human society and important for human identity. In one Quranic verse, it says, "O humankind, we, meaning God, have created you male and female and made you into communities and tribes so that you may know one another." The Quran also recognizes that God purposefully created different communities. In chapter 5, verse 48, the Quran says, "Had God willed, He could have made you one community." From the very beginning, the Quran also acknowledged that people would adhere to different religions. When the Quran was revealed, there were other religions already in Arabia. Thus, from the beginning, the Quran sees Islam as coming into a context where it would have to live with other religions, and for Muslims to live with people of other religions. The Quran also recognizes that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. And it says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." And this is a very important Quranic principle. In another Quranic verse, it says, "To you is your path or religion, to me, mine." So, again, emphasizing freedom of belief and religion. So, in summary, this lecture has explored the topic of Islam and other religions. In the Quran, there are a range of verses about people of other religions and also other religions. Some are very positive, others are less positive, and some are negative. The verses that are less positive or indeed negative can be understood in their historical context often. They were revealed at a time when the Muslim community was under threat or facing persecution from those outside the community, or when agreements of protection and defense had been violated. This is the case with people of other religions. On the whole, the Prophet's attitude towards those from other religions was positive, and he sought for the Muslims to live in a harmonious way with people of other religions. There are, of course, criticisms of other religious traditions and other beliefs and the like. Some religious beliefs, for example, polytheism was not recognized or even, tolerated. The people were, but the beliefs were not considered as acceptable. In the modern period, many Muslim thinkers and scholars are emphasizing positive relations with people of other faiths and also the idea of equality. And these Muslim thinkers are using Quranic texts, ideas, and practices from past Muslim societies in support of their ideas. Equally, there are those Muslims who are opposed to such ideas. But in the modern period, there is a need for Muslims and people of other faiths to live together harmoniously, and a lot of positive ideas and practices in the Quran, in the practice of the Prophet, and in past Muslim societies could be quite helpful in developing positive relations between Muslims and people of other faiths. Thanks for watching. We hope this deepened your understanding of Islam. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series. Keep exploring. Don't forget to subscribe.